Hello, welcome to today's instalment of the patchwork tips and tricks that I'm going to show you along your patchwork journey. Today's theme is quilt as you go. Now this is a lovely easy technique to build your quilts very quickly and to build large quilts quickly as well. So what I've done a little preparation in advance. So I've got myself a square of wadding. It's 6 inches square, but you can cut whatever size square you'd like, and then I've cut a backing fabric which is about 2 inches bigger all the way around, but that doesn't have to be necessarily exactly 2 inches because we're going to trim some of that away at the end anyway. So I'm first of all going to use my Crafter's Companion Stick and Spray. I use this all the time. It's a temporary adhesive which holds the work in place while I'm quilting, and after all, this technique is called quilt as you go. So we are quilting through 3 layers at the same time rather than doing our patchwork and then layering it and quilting it. So we're doing all 3 steps in one go. So having adhered my wadding, as you can see, that's nicely attached there. What we're going to do is cut some strips. So I have already cut some strips in varying widths ready to do this technique, but I will just show you once again how I'm going to cut with my rotary cutter and ruler. So I have doubled my fabric up here. In fact, what I can do is even fold it into 4. So I am cutting through 4 layers at the same time. So I'm just lining that up nice and neatly, and I'm going to cut this one. I'm looking at my ruler here. I'm going to cut this one 1 1/4 inches wide. So I'm going to line up that line on my ruler at 1 1/4, and I'm going to use my rotary cutter, starting on the mat, just pushing down against the edge and cutting that just a little bit more. There we are, and cover the blade, and I have my strip cut and ready to use. So as I have a few already cut, I will move on to how we stitch. Now our first line we're going to do is we're going to put a strip across the diagonal. All we have to make sure is that the strip is long enough, just goes a little bit beyond that corner point and a little bit this way. Now you can, if you would like, at this point, just trim off that extra bit there because we don't want it to get in the way. Don't throw that piece away because we may be able to use that at one of these other points. So I'm going to put a little bit of stick and spray again just to hold that centre strip in place. And I'm going to pop that down there. And then I'm going to choose a different fabric and I'm going to place that. We will work this way. I'm going to place it right sides together. So I'm just lining those edges up. And I'm going to take it to the machine and I'm going to stitch with 1/4 inch seam all the way down there. So I'll just put my foot down and just stitch. And I'm just making sure you can pin if you'd like to, but I'm just holding that in place and stitching down to the bottom. And as soon as I get to the edge of that wadding, I'm going to finish stitching. So I'm just going to trim that off and the back. Just make sure my thread doesn't come undone. And I'm going to take that back to the board and I'm just going to trim that off as well. And then I'm going to flip it back. So this technique can be called flip and strip or quilt as you go. Because as I said, we are quilting. As you can see from the other side, we've stitched through this side as well. We've gone through all 3 layers at the same time. So I'm then going to choose another piece of fabric, another strip, and I like to alternate. This one I call a pattern, this one I call a plain. It has got a pattern on it, but it's got a plain base to it. So I'm just going to choose one with a pattern this time, just to get a little bit of variety. So this is a great technique for your using your scraps up, because you can cut any little strips, any width, and join them in to make a totally scrappy quilt. So again, with the 1/4 inch seam allowance here, just roll down there. Now the other thing I would say with this technique is where if you don't have a 1/4 inch foot and you're not very good at estimating a 1/4 inch, it really doesn't matter, because all we are doing is covering this piece of the square piece of wadding that we put down in the first place. So I have finger pressed this back. If you would like, you can use your iron and just press that down nice and neatly, but we can always do that at the end. So I'm now going to take another bit. Now this is only a small piece, but I can see that that is going to fit. So right sides together again, and pop it under the machine, and starting roughly where that wadding starts, and I'm going to stitch mine here as well. Down to the edge of the wadding, and up and clip the threads. And fold it back. Now I need one more little piece to go over there. So I need quite a wide piece. So that looks about right. If I don't cover that completely, it really doesn't matter, because how we finish it off, I'm going to clip that there, how we finish it off, it's going to cover that wadding as well. So I will just take it back to the machine. You can see how quickly this actually works, and there's no extreme accuracy in having to cut. You could try this technique using strips that aren't accurate all the way down. They could be like wedges, or they could be thinner at one end and fatter at the other. It really doesn't matter. So as you can see, we have covered one end, one side. So all we will do now is turn it around, and we will work in the same direction and cover the other side. Right, so I've finished both sides now. The next little step is to fold that piece of fabric back, because I want to trim all these excess pieces away here. So you can go with your rotary cutter and trim that off. Right, so which I will do now. So I'm just lining that up with the edge of the wadding, and I'm just going to trim that away. Now you must be very careful and make sure you don't cut the backing fabric here, which is why I've turned that back. So I'm going to flip that around again. As I say, ensuring the backing fabric is out of the way, and I'm just lining my ruler with the edge of the wadding that has been sandwiched between the two layers. Trim that bit off, and then we'll flip around to the other side here. And by popping the ruler on the top of the backing fabric, it is holding it out of the way. So again, this is my third side. So I'm very much a fabric hoarder, and I may not throw those bits away because they can make nice stuffing. If you're making something which is totally cotton, you could put those into a little bag and use them as stuffing for another project. Okay, so there is the last side. How quick and easy was that? So now I have a very much neater looking quilt as you go block. The next step is this backing fabric we cut extra wide. I added 2 to 3 inches, and what we want to do is trim it back to 1 inch on all 4 sides. So again, I'm going to pop the ruler with the 1 inch mark. Now we know that's accurate because I used my ruler to cut the edge, and I'm now using the ruler markings to line that up. So that's the 1 inch mark, and I'm just going to trim that off. And I'm going to flip it around. And again, I'm using this edge, which I've just cut, so I know it's accurate. And I'm going to line up that horizontal there. I'm lining up the vertical with the edge that I cut previously of the Quilt As You Go block. And cut that one. You can see that is looking nicely accurate. And the third one is just coming up. So I'll trim that off. And I've covered the blade, as you see. And then the final cut, lining those up. So now I have 1 inch all the way round. At this point, I need my iron again. So I'll just bring that in. And I am going to iron this inch seam in half. And so I'm moving the raw edge towards that raw edge of the Quilt As You Go block. I'm just going to press that down neatly, and then I'm going to turn that around. So here you can see this strip of fabric didn't actually cover the wadding, but it doesn't matter. So we're going to cover that, or rather we're going to move that raw edge again towards the block. So now my edging is 1/2 inch wide. And just go round to the third one. And this is how you would bind any of your Quilt As You Go blocks, just as an individual block. So this could be a place setting, a placemat. You could have used some of Crafter's Companions or the Threaders brand of thermal wadding, which has an insulated layer, and that way the heat doesn't transfer onto your table. So they could be placemats, or they could be for your pots that have got your hot food in. So I've now got that nicely ironed, and we're now going to turn this edge, this 1/2 inch, over onto the top here. So I will turn it back though first of all and trim off the excess bits of thread, which is where we've quilted. If before we did this you wanted to quilt some more, and it's obviously done its quilting as we were stitching, but you could actually quilt across and do some cross hatching, which would look very nice as well. But it is enough at this point to have quilted as we stitched. So just take those last little bits out. Last one there. And this is going to be a very easy way of binding the edge. So we will pop the 1/2 inch seam allowance there over the edge, and I'm just going to go round at the moment to pop that halfway point with a pin, just so that it holds it in place. And when we come to the corners, I'm just going to do today a basic turn. In another video I will show you how to do a mitered turn. So the last one, the last side coming up here, and we'll just fold that one over. But this way it just means you are stitching down your binding again all in one go. There are other ways of putting bindings around a quilt or a block like this, but that will also come up in a later video. So let me just turn that in there. I'm just going to tuck that under. I'll pop a pin there just to hold that nicely. And then again I'm going to take it to the machine and we're going to stitch all the way round. So because the corner's a little bit more bulky, I'm going to start just the other side of the corner, and I'm going to stitch right on the edge of that binding. And as I come up to it, I'm going to leave my needle in because I just want to push that bit back so that the needle goes straight into there. I'm then going to turn that around. I'm going to take my pin out because it's the wrong way around anyway, and then I'm just going to stitch along the edge here. I'm using my foot as a guide so that I can get a nice straight stitch if I can. And I'll just carry on here. Now because this corner piece is going to the edge, I'm going to actually turn that back and I'm going to stitch back again just along there so that I'm ready to continue along the next seam. So again, I'll take my pin out and move that forward and take it as slowly as you like. I think it's much better to go a little bit slower rather than have to unpick because you're not quite happy that it's perfect. And again, I'm going to go, if you've got a needle down, it's on your machine, it's really good because the needle stays in the same place while you swivel your work around. That's it. And then it's already in place. Just coming up to the next corner and along this straight seam. You can see how effective this is and how nice, simple and straightforward to just finishing the work off, and quite quickly because it's done by machine. coming up to the last edge here, and again just pull that back and pin out, and we'll just walk our little way over here. And when it comes to joining, I'll get that thread out of the way there. What is a good thing to do here is, rather than just go up to that last stitch, I would just go 2 or 3 stitches in, so that you've got 2 lots of stitching over that same point and it won't come undone. So let's just take that here, so I'll just clip that little bit off there and turn it to the back and clip those there. Now how neat does that look? Just clip a little bit as well. So there is your Quilt As You Go block. I did one previously, or I did 4 previously as well. So here you can see I've got exactly the same block, but I've actually laid them in a different direction, so it makes this nice 4 lots of Quilt As You Go blocks into a nice place setting. You'll probably notice here as well is a way of joining them, so keep tuned, because what will be coming shortly to you is how to join these Quilt As You Go blocks.